Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight, Episode 21. This is a developer's journey into making cool stuff. We are your tag team partners in your development redemption arc to reach production gold. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Cocoa Heads community focused on Apple development that primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, and watchOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own development journey. Whew. All right.
Nice. So what are we talking about today, Kotaro?
We're talking about my mea culpa. But first, but first, we had forgotten to do a thing last time we did a podcast that we should be celebrating about, that we had actually passed the 20 podcast mark. So congratulations to you too, and to all of us.
I don't understand why is 20 the milestone.
I don't know. Aaron mentioned it.
Oh, okay, it's a nice even number. Well, this is 21,
nice
so we can drink now, I guess, which is good because
yes.
Side Project Saturday is going to be at a brewery. So
yeah,
there we go.
That's right. We're going to try to meet in person. So if you want to come hang out with us, or at least a few of us, we should be at, what was that place? Human Robot Jenkintown. Well, this wasn't even meant to be a segue into this, but it might as well. So we're bringing back Side Project Saturday in live in person if you want to attend. If you go to meetup.com, you go to the Philly Coca group, you can see the information. And we're going to try to also do a Zoom, but it's going to be at Human Robot Jenkintown, which is a really nice brewery in Jenkintown, right near the train station and parking. Because it's cheap parking and there's some lots around. There's street parking. It's the suburbs. Mm-hmm. It's literally just a straight trip up Broad Street. You might have to parallel park just a little.
Yeah, or you can pay like 50 cents or something like that to park in the lot.
Yeah,
it's nearby. It's cross street.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's about the easiest location that I could find that would be good for suburban people and city people. Easy to get to on regional rail or by car, and have cheap parking, and have a Dunkin' Donuts nearby so you can get coffee. So,
and what is it? 2 minutes from your house, Steve?
Well, it's a little more than that. Yeah, it's like 5 minutes from my house. Yes, it is close. I do have to lug a bunch of crap down there to set it up, though, to set up stuff. So, but it'll be fun. I don't know. We're gonna try it out, see if it works.
Yep.
And hopefully you will join us on the 23rd this month. So we're doing it a little early.
So we had 2 weeks to work on our little to-do list app that we have codenamed Pickle Jar. And getting back to the point of my mea culpa, a big part of what we were supposed to do, or I was supposed to get done, was a lot of the UI work, in terms of at least laying out in Sketch or in some design program what the layout would look like, how the interactions would happen, how you would enter in your goals and your logs for those goals, etc., etc. What happened between those periods of time is that I didn't do any of it, to be frank. And I could come up with a myriad of excuses, but to be honest, there were none that were good. So the key blocker I had, because I did sketch a lot on a notepad just to sort of flesh out the idea, and a lot of it was more to design the iPad / the Mac version first. It's kind of a backwards approach because that was kind of our focus in building this app. We wanted to build a Mac app and kind of just reduced it down to iPad at the moment. But I still wanted to make that the focal point of the interaction, the experience, if you will. And then as I was sort of working through ideas, the revelation in my mind was like, what is the top level concepts that we're trying to sort of keep at the highest level? Like, what's the immediate thing you need to see first, and then what are the categories, or of items that you might want to review? So like a report view, maybe your transactions of all your logs, or like the sort of top level, all your goals, right? How does that interaction look like? Or how does the layout look like for that? what's the high priority for today, right? That you need to see, right? Like all your to dos for today. Maybe you need like some kind of like, did you do it today? Like a UI for that. And I think that sort of was my blocker for a good chunk of these past 2 weeks. I mean, the time that I put into for these past 2 weeks was like, how do I bubble those type of things up at the right time? So when you open up the app, what you see first. When you go into, if you go into your areas where you want to configure your goals and get a better, more detailed version of that, where should you go for that? So that's basically something, and that's the trouble with doing that and being responsible for that, is that you are the bottleneck in a lot of ways for so that, or I was the I'm the bottleneck for all the work for Steve and Aaron to do, since they were more because you guys were more to handle the functionality and sort of the back end part of this work. If you will.
Well, it sounds like you had UI hierarchy design paralysis or decision paralysis.
I guess you could. I guess this is like a pseudo version of like what you can call like a writer's block, right?
Okay,
it's like
UI block.
Like I don't. Yeah. It's hard to really, like, you look at some other apps and you kind of see how they do it, and you're trying to like draw inspiration from the good things that they do, right? Sometimes maybe too much. So like when I look at Habit, it really strives very hard to be as minimalist as possible, and I kind of don't want to go that far into the minimalist kind of metaphors. I kind of wanted to keep it like, what is important for you at what given time. I like apps that are very, like, I like the fact that it was minimalist, and I like the fact that it got to the point of like but it was almost too much, right? It didn't give context for like your activities of all your activities at one given moment.
Yeah, well,
it was kind of like
one of the things we were trying to accomplish here was we wanted, because we're trying to do it as a Mac app, and the idea was you have that screen real estate, and then how do I visualize my biggest goals? Because the whole point of this is not, again, just to reiterate for people who've been listening for a while or maybe forgot, like, this is not just a standard like to-do app. The idea is more like long-term goal management for this, a way for you to both maybe form a habit so that you're consistently making progress towards some longer-term goal of some sort, and then being able to kind of see them in context with and get reports, or be able to generate reports on whether or not you're making progress, and maybe what kind of things might be blocking you, that kind of stuff. So just kind of it's kind of a more of a goal tracker, habit tracker in a lot of ways. And I've seen your UI sketches, and they're not bad.
No, but they're kind of like first drafty. I think none of them were screaming out to me. Like, believe it or not, when you look at that was me marrying like 3 or 4 different other UIs inside of that one Sketch document. And for people who don't know, Sketch is an app that you use to wireframe out your app that you want to build. It's really good for just Sketch and Figma are both the 2 dominant apps in this space. Mostly Figma.
Yeah, mostly Figma.
But I like Sketch because I started with Sketch first, and it feels that I flow better with Sketch than I do with Figma. The challenge is like we're at it. We have a sidebar, and I'm trying to fill the sidebar with like how each of the core UI should look like, right? Or like, where do you go? That's the core navigation.
Well, I mean, as I said, it sounds like your trouble is, what is the hierarchy? Like, what are the top level? So when you're designing something like this, and we're trying to do it cross-platform, so it's like there's certain standard user interface elements, like a sidebar that'll pop up on iPad, or like tab bars that might show up on iPhone. And it's like, what is that top level hierarchy? And because that's going to also indicate what's the most important thing in the app. And we had a lot of ideas we've had about it's in the data model. You know, we have like the goals, and we have this like we're logging for the goals, and we didn't really talk about sprints that are in there, and then there's like reporting information. So I can understand it's kind of difficult. So as you've been going through it, did you come to any kind of conclusion for yourself about what is the most important screen? Like, what is the most important action in the app in your mind?
The funny thing that I found fascinating, not fascinating, but it's like, well, we have all this data model, the core data model, and we haven't like fleshed out just adding the core functionality in there. So I started like adding like, okay, like there were some things that we added like tags and sprints, and I just want to get those in there so that I can sort of play with that interaction in the app. So I began to start adding that later in the later part of the past 2 weeks. I've been sort of like, okay, like I'm having a blocker. I just need to see it working, right? Just all the core functional pathways of like how this app is working, so that I can kind of begin to like dogfooding it more or less.
Yeah, I mean,
we're trying to like build a path to dog food it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to dog food a little bit. You've been you were adding some screens, and I was coming in and refactoring them, the data model, which is kind of our plan from last time anyway. But it was like every time I'd sit down to do something, like the last couple weeks, you had done some kind of change, and then I'm going in there like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to like refactor this because we're trying to fit it into a more of a proper MVVM type model, and we finally have that. I think the main idea of that pretty much understood now. So we're starting to make some real progress on it as I'm refactoring things.
I mean, one of the interesting points you made, I think it was yesterday or earlier this morning, was the whole concept of when to add sprints, right? Because sprints define sort of the time frame of when your to-do list app is your to-do tasks are to be like the start date and end date and the duration, or some of the attributes.
The vision I had was that you'd have these goals in there, but then sometimes you might want to focus. So it's not like you always have to use a sprint, but just like in software development, you have this big backlog of tasks. That's how I kind of imagine you could end up with goals. Like you could end up with like a bunch of long-term goals, but you can't accomplish all of them at the same time. So you got to prioritize them. And one way we do that when we do software development, obviously, is you say, okay, this is going to be our next sprint. These are the tasks we're going to be working on. And then you're going to do it for that period of time, and then you're going to reevaluate how you did. And then you're going to either, maybe you got something done and maybe you didn't. But whatever happened during that sprint is going to inform the next one. And so the idea is that sprints are an optional thing, maybe, but it's in there. And it's not even unique. There's some other apps that do this kind of thing too, with more along the lines of, I think, with what is it, OKRs? Is that what they're called? I've seen some other apps that kind of try to do this, and it can get pretty complicated. I was trying to think really simply, you drag them into, like you do it, like drag them into like a column or something, kind of like Trello style or something like that. Something really easy, where you just create a sprint and you just put in what you want in there. There's a couple different ways I think to visualize it, but yeah, then the sprint just creates a focused view of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And in my mind, when you're trying to do a sprint, I would think that would be like the top level of your UI hierarchy. Like if I'm in the middle of a sprint, that's what I want to see, because that's where like those are the goals that I'd want to be in focus. And then if I'm not in a sprint, it would be more of a general thing, maybe the report screen.
Because that's the kind of thing that like would on the sidebar nav, that would almost be like a second item, right? So you have goals and then you have a sprint, and then you can put your goals in the sprint.
Yeah.
And like, so you can create custom sprints that are like, okay, this January sprints are this or whatever.
I mean, it's pretty flexible. I mean, we're trying to keep it simple, and then you can kind of do it the way you want. I mean, I imagined something like I want to work on something for 2 weeks, and do it. But then I can imagine you could set up more than once. You could set up sprints. I mean, I guess you could set up more than one sprint. I mean, I don't think that's the best of ideas, but I guess you could. Because the way I imagine it, is part of the process of using this app is that you're reviewing, and so if you use a sprint, especially at the end of a sprint, there's a review, portion. You should be going back and looking at the log notes that you made during that time, and then logging, like a sprint retrospective. So you can, and the whole point is just to get you thinking about it. So okay, I was working on these 2 goals. I was trying to do my 25 push-ups a day, and I was trying to draw for an hour, every other day or something. And in these 2 weeks, I kind of did one and didn't quite do the other one, and there were these different things blocking me, and I could see that when I'm looking at my notes for this. And so, like, how do I want to change it moving forward? And it's a tool to help you do that, because I find that reviewing is a key part of keeping on track with projects. Is that you have to go back and like look at whether you've accomplished what you set out to, and that also means you have to kind of log it as you go along. It's like do at work. You might log what you're doing every day, so that you can look back at it the next week, stay on track.
So this is a question. It's an implementation detail question. So you have a start and end date for the sprints. Is that also extendable to time? So like a start date of like 8 a.m. January 1st to like 9
sure.
p.m.
It's going to have a time. I mean, by default, if you use a date of some sort, it's going to be like midnight if you don't pick some other time, I guess.
Right. That's where I was kind of getting it in that sense of like, do we want to provide that option, or do we even want to have something that's strictly time based?
Well, do you have a scenario in mind where you want to be really specific about the time and not more than a day?
Like a game jam would be, or hackathon would be a good example.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, why not? That sounds like a reasonable approach. See, I didn't even think about that. That's cool. Like a game, so you could use that as a game jam. You could say these are the things we're trying to accomplish. That actually might be a good use of this, because there's a limited number of amount of time. There's like kind of big chunk of goals that you have to accomplish, and you could probably list them out. You could use it for that. I mean, it's a little different, but why not?
Yeah, it's a little long edge casey sort of way, but I mean, because it's much more of a collaborative point, and probably version 2 of this app in my mind.
Well, I mean, we do want to get a collaborative version of this in version 2.
Yeah, the shared container component. Yeah. Then there is something like duration days you have for the sprint. Is that for an occasion where it's an optional thing? So like, as opposed to like a start and end date, you say, you know what, I want this to be for like 20 days or something like that. Is that the thought pattern for that attribute?
I think so. I haven't looked at the model in a while. It's quite possible I messed up the model. Let me see. You say that's in the sprint duration? Duration days.
Days, yeah.
You know what?
Days.
That's a good point. You don't actually need that if you have a start date and end date. But I guess, if you had a number of days, and then you could calculate what the end date is if you knew.
I mean,
that's a good question. That might be something I want to reevaluate. But yeah, I mean, you might want to have like a sprint that's like 20 days long, or 15 days long, or 14 days. You might want to do it in a number of days. That was my thinking.
All right. Okay. Because that might be interesting. Just like
if you wanted to do it that way, you'd probably just calculate that to a date, and still got to store it as the date range.
Yeah. It may not be necessary to actually store the that duration number of days, because you're just going to calculate a start and end date anyway. But as I said, it's possible.
So the way I'm looking at it, now that we've had this discussion on some level, I think there are 3, maybe 4 large views that I wanted to sort of figure out. And I think goals was one of them, like your list of goals and whatever you need to do today. And then you can kind of like go into each goal and like see the higher detail of that. Then the other one is sprints. So that would be like one level down. And then the that would just be like all your sprints. And then the one under that is reports, which is kind of like a broad view of how your performance is doing. And maybe one for settings, but I kind of want to keep settings in like its own small section if I can. Like a higher level modal that you just bring up wherever.
Yeah. So goals, sprints, and reports. That's basically
Those are the three.
the whole thing. I mean, you have to log stuff, but that's kind of associated with a goal. So,
I don't think you need to worry about the hierarchy right now. Like, just we need to get those views figured out, and then you'll figure out where they fit in the hierarchy.
Yeah. Right. So I think the thing that I would like to maybe spread out the work on for us is just getting all the pathways of adding, deleting, and editing the goals and the sprints in for this sprint. If you two can split that work up and figure out and just add those functionalities in wherever, whether it be through the core data manager or the review models, wherever you feel it's appropriate.
Okay.
And then that way we can just use like a bare bone form to like do that. And then from there, what I can do is recommit my time to really focus on the layout design of these things. So basically the way I'm looking at it is like by the end of the sprint, all the core pathways of like adding, deleting, and editing these forms are done. The data is completed. Like that part won't have to be solved.
Yeah. Yeah, that is what I've been working on.
Yes.
I mean, my slowness. I mean, I've made progress, but I mean, I'm not super fast because I'm also learning how to use core data like this. So I barely touched core data honestly before this. So like I keep hitting a thing where I'm like, okay, I want to do this thing, and then I'm like, how do I do this with Swift UI? So it's the core data and Swift UI interface that is the thing where I think you put a tweet up in the Slack. It was like it spoke to me. It was it's because it's like I'll try to do something and then I'll have to like spend half an hour doing research. What was it? It was like, here's on the weekend I
figure out.
You have your tweet here. It says like on the weekend I have 2 hours to work on my projects for today. Here's my breakdown. First hour, figure out where I left off. Next half hour, research the fix update. Last half hour, code 2 to 3 lines, run into an error and give up. Like that's literally what it's been like. Every time I go into this thing, I'd create a branch, and I'd start changing something, and then I'd hit some error. And I'm like, crap, I got to go do something else now because, I can't spend all day on this. And then I come back to it.
Here's a hilarious part. I know the solution that the problem I'm trying to solve for anything core data related has already been solved in Fave 10.
Nice. I don't have access to Fave. Do I have Fave 10's code access?
Yeah, so if I just give you guys access to that. But basically, there's a lot of that stuff that, like a good example is like referencing and then a tag, like adding a tag into a goal was a lot more painful than it needs to be, right? And then or deleting a log, right? Because you have to figure out where that log belongs, to which goal.
There should be a relationship. I thought I set up a relationship for that.
Yeah, I don't know if you do. That's the thing. Like maybe you just need to get reference to the log, and then it'll just delete itself. It'll know where to delete itself.
There is a relationship set up. You should be able to look at a log and then find the goal it's associated with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing, right? Like, and then it's so like you have to remember how that all works in core data.
Well, I mean that's why. Yeah, I mean that's why I'm trying to build an abstraction so we don't have to think about it. But again, I have no idea if I'm doing it right. Like if I'm just gonna cause some kind of like threading problem or something because I don't know if I'm doing it right. And again, it's mostly because Swift UI is so weird, and it's so nothing works like you might think if you're coming from UIKit, and it's still a problem for me because now I'm like core data really doesn't work with Swift UI. I'm sorry, like it just does not fit with the mental model of Swift UI, even with Apple's like wrappers and stuff and additions that I can't really use anyway because we're trying not to put a bunch of fetching code all over the place. So, kind of annoying.
I think that's the. Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, I've seen different approaches to it. I'm not happy with any of them, so I've just been experimenting every time I mess around with it. I've been refactoring and trying to, get things cleaner.
Well, the one thing I will say, like sometimes it might be easier not to be too clean in that regard. Like, I think if we were like really big on testing, I can see that point. But on some level, it's like, because this is more of a side project-y thing and we're not worried about making sure we make code that's testable.
Yeah, I mean, there's another layer of abstraction I think I need to do in order for testing to work really well. And I almost did it, but I didn't quite. I was like, do I need to factor this into like repositories or something, a protocol, like a repository protocol? We still might, but I wanted to be able to write some tests for things. And that was one of the other issues with all this stuff is like, testing core data or testing. Well, I guess it depends on where you're trying to test, but like writing tests for the data storage layer is not the easiest thing in the world.
Sure. So okay, so we have basically the next sprint will end on the 24th. And so that'll be close to the end of June, for which case we have to have what it would be considered a reasonable facsimile.
It's July. It's July.
I'm sorry, July. Right, July.
I wish we still another month.
Well, I mean, a reasonable facsimile of a pseudo prototype. I always assumed August would be the testing refinement phase, but I think August we can repurpose August as like, yes, we're refining, but we're really going to be using that time to really get that UI in the right place and in the right. Like we'll probably experiment a lot more in the UI there and spend September really figuring out. We're really focused on the refinements and the bug fixes.
Yeah, I mean, the area we were trying to be kind of a little more innovative in was, I think, the reporting area of this, because that's like a main thing. And again, my whole thing is I want to be able to, see my progress in different ways, and then the other aspect was maybe notifications to help you kind of give you a kick in the pants. Remind you of streaks and stuff.
Do we want I guess once we get the core functions in, would it make sense for Aaron to take on the notification side of things, just to get that at least, so it would be like local notifications, right? So just to get that process in. And I guess the question is like, what would be in the notifications when you get it, right? It's like, hey, did you do the thing? Did you do your push-ups for today?
Well, I mean, you have in your UI prototypes here, you have some mentions of streaks. Like that's a possible thing you want to do. Like we talked about before, we wanted the app to be more of not like we wanted it to feel like it was inspiring you. Like the whole kind of point of it is like, oh, like, so I think streaks are a good one because that's a common thing you want to show people. So when you open the app, you want to see if you have a streak, and also you might want to have a reminder that says if you set up a goal that you were going to do something Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? For instance, then on Wednesday, you'd probably want to pop up and be like, hey man, you've had like a 3-day streak, keep it up today.
Do we want to have a whole mode where like instead of streaks it just tells you how bad you're doing?
We can like, leave. Yeah, that's funny. A whole mode.
You haven't done anything for 3 days. What's going on?
We're gonna become like Carrot.
I just sent you hormone over.
App.
Yeah,
God.
But just like a really nasty version of the Carrot app.
I like that as like an Easter egg. Like, why not? We could have a little settings, but like, don't be offended. A big warning message, like, don't email us. Told you this is the a-hole mode. Yeah, I don't know what we could do that because why not? We just change the language. That's pretty funny. I'm all for a-hole mode.
And then, like, instead of saying, okay, don't notify me, it'll just constantly notify you, do the exact opposite of what it tells you to do. Oh,
I mean, yeah, we can flex. The caution I would put in there about some of these, like, is that if you try to be too flexible and have too many, like, little features in there, then you miss the core opinion of the app. And it's like, we have very little time to try to get something submitted. So we have to really focus on the core, which is the goals, the sprints, and the reporting. And so we need to define. I think we have goals, and you can log goals. You can do logs on goals. You can create goals. You can delete goals. You can do that kind of stuff now. Sprints you just started working on. I saw in the UI, and that needs some more work. And then reports is where we basically haven't done any UI thought, and that needs some focus.
I think what I'll do is I'll create a sprint view, just so I can get some data entry for that.
Yeah, I think that might be a good place for you to stretch your design muscles here, because I don't know what that should look like. You can visualize that in a variety of ways. I imagine visualizations that look like a calendar. I imagine visualizations that look like, like bars, and I see graphs. I see all kinds of stuff in my mind. The ways you can visualize. I don't know, how do you visualize a sprint? There's lots of software you can take inspiration from, or physical.
I should go check Jira.
Yeah, check Jira. Use that as your inspiration.
That should be my inspiration. I should just make it like add like a dispatch async delay. Just make artificial delays.
Yeah. Well, no. Remember the
put everything on the main thread.
The idea that for visualizing this in my mind, I've always had a version of that paper system that we talked about early on. Mm-hmm. That's always a visualization I had in my mind for the sprint, where it was kind of like a row of days, and with a symbol that says whether you accomplish something or not, and then you could like dive into it. I always kind of thought of it that way, because I was thinking of it on a bigger screen, and then I could look at it that way. And then maybe another way was on a calendar, because I think that's an obvious way too to do it. But I don't know if you always want to see it on a calendar per se, because it's like, do you need to know the specific days? Not necessarily. You kind of need to know where you are on a sprint, but do you need to see it on a calendar? I don't know. That visualization of the columns, one column for each day, and like a check in it or something from the paper one. That one is very compact, so I think it could work on a phone, and I think you can spread it out to work on a bigger screen, and it just gives you a lot of information in a very easy to understand visualization. So that's the idea that I had in my mind, how we might be the primary visualization for like your position in a sprint.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I would almost would be interesting to see the gaps between the time you do, like if I do a push-up and then I'm like every day, if I do 25 push-ups every day, but then I miss like 5 days in a row, it'd be kind of nice to see like a visual gap of that.
Yeah, because you have to, since you're recording, you're supposed to be logging it regularly, like however you set up your goal, timeline. And if you don't log something, I mean, then you know that there's no log in there. And if you do log that you didn't accomplish it because of some issue, then that's like a slightly different thing you can highlight in there. And I imagine at the end of a sprint, you just kind of collect all these logs together in some little visual, like put them together in like a document,
like a calendar,
Well, I mean, like a report. Like these are my entries. Just kind of collapse them into reports you can read, and then you can also take like your notes for your sprint, and then you can go back in your reports. You can say, "Oh, I did like 3 sprints with these goals in it," and here's like my report for each one of them, and here's what I wanted to do, what I accomplished, what I didn't accomplish. Again, I think I'm really inspired by that particular paper thing we did. What the hell was it called? But I really liked the.
I have to check my Trello board.
Yeah, I'm checking the Trello board now. I really like the way that he had that thought out in the. God, Gotcha. The Martin system, right? Yeah, we talked about that. So I really like that whole system as a means of trying to accomplish some habit. I think in his case, or a goal, and then he had a cycle review, which is what you would do on a sprint retrospective. So again, a lot of people come to the same solution to these issues. They just call them different things. Like we talk about sprints because we're developers. Other people might talk about cycles, whatever. But so that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. We have our the view of your sprint is, in my mind, more like a set of columns, and then the goals, a view of goals. I mean, I don't know if you need anything more than like a list view or a collection view of some sort that you can organize by tag, because we do have tags to help you instead of a folder structure. I thought maybe tags might work best, and then so you need to be able to filter by tag. But that's kind of a somewhat standard view. I mean, I don't know if you need like super complicated view for that. And then the reports are kind of dependent on I guess on the data that we have, and it's mostly going to be kind of yes, no, and dates.
I think it'll be interesting of like it. I think it can start out simple from a user point of view. So like, I guess the way I'm looking at it is maybe it starts out very basic or even empty, right? And then slowly it sort of begins to fill itself out the more you engage, the more data you enter. So in a weird way, it's almost like a weird, like, not a game, but you know how like sometimes a game, the map will reveal itself the more you like explore, kind of like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild games where you're just, the more you do stuff, the more you explore, the more the map is revealed to you, kind of thing. So I kind of want to do something like that for the report section, kind of like you did a week worth of work, a chart shows up that wasn't there before. Or
that's cool. Make it a little more whimsical.
Yeah,
so like it appears.
And then, right. Yeah.
You don't just want to have a big empty chart that says not enough data.
No, yeah, right.
I mean, I was thinking maybe something like that, but it seems like it's like
a placeholder chart. You can have a placeholder chart where it's like one way of doing it. You can have a placeholder where it's kind of like the outline of what a chart would actually be there, but it's not. There's no data yet, so it's like
I was thinking about that too, but I almost want to make it dynamic in a sense of like, the charts might show up in different grid styles depending on how much data you've collected over time. But that's a little more complex. I might start with some basics, like grade 6 sets, and then as we sort of refine it, maybe in September, I might try and make it a little more dynamic.
Yeah, I was supposed to do the reports. I didn't get them working because I've been doing the architecture, but whomever. Sure. I'll try to do some reporting again, but I don't think it matters who works on it. Like whoever, if you do something, just make a branch. And then.
Yeah, I mean, the idea maybe is like if you have like a duration, not duration, what's the, like a set amount that you want to accomplish for the whole thing, maybe like a progress bar, or if you have another one, like a line chart of like all the, like every month how many you did or whatever every week. And then you have another one that is maybe a pie chart of some kind related to your yeses versus your nos of how many times you've accomplished, or maybe some kind of graph like of identifying like patterns of the notes that you write, of like, like maybe a common phrase that you use, like
that'd be interesting to figure out.
Yeah, or like I didn't sleep, I slept horribly or something like that. I mean, there are a lot of.
I'm not even sure how we did.
You're starting to get into some NLP stuff over there.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
What's NLP defined?
Natural language processing.
Yeah.
And I'll look to you for that, Aaron.
I mean, that's kind of because this is a side project. One of the things we had in mind was can we keep expanding it? Can we keep coming back to it if we want to and do crazier and crazier stuff? And so I like that idea. Like we have it, we get it out there, and then we have an update someday that just uses natural language processing to tell you like your common phrases in your logs or something. like what other like to do app would have that in there? That's funny. I like that one. I'm gonna put that on the Trello.
You think about it from a standpoint of like, and it's only if the person actually enters anything in their logs, right? Of like notes in their logs, right? Of like, yeah, I just didn't feel like it, or or like, yeah, I did 20, they said 25, I did 30 or whatever, I did more, right? So maybe you have like overachievement, some kind of way to identify, like, oh, this person's overachieving.
Yeah, well, this is all more
conceptual.
Do you have in your mind now, after we've had this discussion so far, a clearer idea of the kind of UI experience you want to build, Kotaro?
I have a clear idea, at least in terms of like the core components that I want to have in the app. So being that goals, sprints, and reports. We can rename something much more sexy, but that's the core. And then the key interactions for all of them are relatively easy in my mind to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought of goals, sprints, reports can be like 3 tabs.
Yes,
in my mind too.
Yes.
Like that's how I kind of because there are different modes of using. You can look at your goals and add goals, and then reports are obviously kind of a separate thing.
Right. And so what I would want to now is figure out how to make sure that those interactions are fairly lightweight in the app. So for the user, right? So when they come in the morning or whatever, do their quick yes or no, and then, or like the other thing too is like, do I have a way to just, should I allow them to snooze a to do, right? It's like, I don't know yet.
The thing, and also when we're talking about UX priorities here, I imagine that the thing you're going to do the most is going to be looking at reports and logging. I don't know which amount, but you're not going to be in the app all the time. But when you are in the app, you're going to, I imagine I want like a menu bar item at some point. I'd imagine like you want to be able to see like the charts perhaps, but you're going to go in there and you're going to log stuff potentially every day. So that's probably going to be the main thing you do, but you're not going to be creating goals every single day. So then, I feel like that's the order of things. It's like logging should be really easy to do, and anything related to like reviewing that kind of stuff. So I guess that's reporting, and then goals is like the third most important thing. Because I don't think you're going to be messing around with your goals too much, but maybe I'm wrong.
You might need some kind of like onboarding thing of like create your first goal or something.
Yeah, I think because
otherwise you don't really have anything. So you gotta get that set up, and then
so we need onboarding.
Go into the background.
Yeah.
Right.
What's that app you like so much? With the world's greatest checkbox, whatever.
Oh, Habits.
Habits. Yeah, that is a very straightforward app.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny because that app is designed with the iPhone first mentality. Yeah. So what you see in the iPad version is almost like just a stretched, most of the time, just a stretched out version of the iPhone.
It's a very elaborate, graphics and stuff, but it's actually functionally very straightforward. It's like, here's the thing you want to check the box. That's it.
Right. So a lot of time is spent on the simple interactions, and in our case, I think we're more like the Mac, like designing it for the Mac, and then shrinking it back down to the iPhone.
That was always the plan.
That was always the plan. Yeah. So for the Ventura install, I'm just gonna hold off to the very September. Would be the closest I would actually touch Ventura, and I'm hoping like a lot of the work that we do in the iPad version will translate. Eventually, the conversion won't be so bad, assuming that we've targeted the iPad. The work that we've done on the iPad, the translation won't be as dramatic when we get it on the Mac. So we have a game plan for next week in that sense. Is there any confusion in what we want to work on, or?
No, I'm going to continue getting the and along with Aaron, because he's helped me. I'm going to continue doing the architecture so that we have the functionality you need to hook in for the UI, so you don't have to think about it. So you can just call the methods you need to.
I don't know if we're going to get to it, like fully remove all the core data entities from the UI layer. I really want. I don't want to like have any of those things, but.
Well, we should talk about that, Aaron, maybe off of this, because I was refactoring last night and I was like, should I switch this so that I'm mapping into like structs or into view models for the goals, for instance, and then have a goal view model be displayed instead of the goal entity from Core Data? That's something we could talk about, because I don't know if we want to bend.
I think like Core Data should like stop in the view model and never leave. Like the view model gets the Core Data stuff, and that just represents like storage and.
Yeah, I mean, it just means we have to duplicate some. We have to do some mapping and stuff. We'll talk about that. But we'll be doing that so that your UI level layer, you can just kind of hook into things. Even if we just have to put in some stub functions in places, I'll just get something to work.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it right now is like I'm gonna just put placeholder stuff in the reports and the sprint, so get that layout done of just
there's no reason that you can't do the layout before.
Yeah, and then we'll hook it in. Yeah. We'll fix the actual connections and set up the view models and stuff like that as we go along, and so that's good. And then what's important though is you get some screens prototyped.
Yep. So that'll probably. So the way I'm looking at it is next week I can kind of focus a little bit on that, and then the week after. And then probably start refining it. So the first week will be all about getting all the major pathways laid out, so you and Aaron can just add the functionality in, so like the forms and that kind of stuff. And then from there, and like the reports would just be like a placeholder chart for now, just to give you the idea of what it could look like. And then from there, you guys can kind of flesh out the interactions, and then I'll start trying to like refine, maybe figure out the sort of UI for the sprint part of it, because the interactions of the sprint thing is probably the more complex out of the two major views. In terms of like how it brings in the goals and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man, just go copy Jira.
I want to do something cool like a drag and drop plan situation.
Yeah,
but
drag and drop into a sprint. Why not?
Jira board. Sure. Yeah,
that's very Mac-like to be able. It's very Mac-like to drag and drop things when you could just easily use a keyboard command or something. It's very Mac-like. Now I'm gonna use my mouse.
Yeah, just take a goal from the goal view, drag it into the sprint view, and then drag it into a sprint. That would be very Mac-like.
Yeah, just drag and drop. But yeah, okay. So I think we're good. If we have to have something like dog foodable in the next week and a half.
Yes, I would say by the end of next sprint, we need to make sure it's dog foodable.
Yeah, I mean, that means for me, if it's the iPad app, I can run it on my M1. I can just run it fine.
Yep.
I think if you're running the Intel one, you need the Mac version, right? But we can't do that yet, so you'd have to dog food the iOS version.
Yeah. So one thing that I don't have a iPhone with the. Actually, the one interface I don't have, which I guess I could just rely on the simulator for, is the iPhone interface, how that might look. So that's a part that I might need to tweak or debug and test that flow out. Make sure that it's not because the key part of that UI is much more about just quick hits and then go, right? I did it. Am I good for the day? Done. You can look at the reports, but the whole point of it is you're just trying to say, hey, I accomplished my task for the day, I'm out.
Yeah, I've been mostly testing with the iOS simulator on like a iPhone 13 mini, I think.
Okay.
Just because that's like the smallest screen that most people are going to have. See how it works.
I mean, one extra flavor that I want to add, regardless, is maybe some way to just audio record your not audio, but like transcribe your notes, so you don't have to like type anything.
Isn't that built in? Can't you use the keyboard button to do that?
I don't know if that. I don't think that's built in. It
should be built into the keyboard.
If you're using like a regular text field, I thought you could just do that. But
oh, you're right. Duh. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice when Apple just provides this stuff that would otherwise take hundreds of hours.
I keep forgetting that. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, but if it's in the keyboard though, as opposed to just having the option there. Anyway. All right. Forget what I said.
I think you're also, when you're messing around with the visualizations for logging and reports and stuff, you might want to add in some other richer data in there, like photos or something. So we'll have to change the model if that's the case. But just mock it up, just go wild.
Yeah.
I started with the model to be as simple as I could think.
I mean, the other thing too is like we could do stuff where we just provide a URL link or something, and then the image can be stored remotely.
There's options.
There's options.
A URL or just rich text that can include a URL. Like, I'm not really sure how I wanted to do that with the logging, so I kept it pretty simple. But something like in OmniFocus or Microsoft To Do or something, I use links to things all the time in the little notes area because they don't have a separate URL. I don't think so. They just have a notes area that you can put URLs in, and that works quite well actually to link things. But I'm open to anything.
Okay. I will see what. I mean, again, like I kept thinking, like, do we need to include images? And the only thing I do want to do is maybe have an avatar or an icon for your goals or your sprints, even.
Yeah.
So an attribute for that. I wonder if we could cheat and use the symbol.
I would try to use SF symbols as much as possible. It'll save so much time. And the options now, and the if you looked at any of the stuff from WWDC, I mean, you could do a lot do a lot with them now.
Right. So I was thinking about that as an option. Oh yeah, we could do that, right? We could just identify, or we could say, based on what you entered, right, push-ups or something like that. No, that's not going to work.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, that's what Outlook, the app, does for calendars events. I think it does something like that. When you put stuff in the calendar, it'll put a little like emoji icon next to it. It seems to detect certain words.
So if I type like food or like ramen, it'll like figure out.
Or if it said lunch or workout or something, I think that's what it did. It would make it. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I thought it did this. So if you put something on your calendar, it was like workout or lunch or something, it would have a little icon of food or something.
That might be
that kind of thing is that's straightforward to do. You just have like a dictionary of certain words associated with a SF symbol. Like we could totally do that.
Right. Okay.
That would
maybe
be cool,
what I'll do is I'll put a placeholder icon, and we might want to add that attribute.
Yeah.
Might consider adding that attribute to an attribute to that.
So the next version of your UI prototypes here is going to be more visual, I think. So
yes, more visual.
So go more wild, because we want it to be visual and interesting, not just a bunch of text.
Oh, I thought we wanted it to be boring. We want it to be the opposite of the other one.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily want to go like sort of designing 3D rotating like models that grow over time as you accomplish.
Let me tell you something. I'm gonna make it so that it's so much like Jira. It's gonna have text everywhere. It's blue buttons everywhere, gray and blue, and just put you to sleep. All right, cool. Well, I think that is all we have for today. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you will find links to our Slack, meetup schedule, and contact info. If If you're feeling generous, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcast. Also, please share this podcast with all your developer friends. And one more thing. A user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not that good. Till next time, good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always. I should go check Jira. That should be my inspiration.